Magalie Laguerre-Wilkinson, and this is Science and You, coming to you from the Center for Discovery and Innovation at City College. We start our half hour with a visit to Cooper Hewitt. Andrew Falzon found an exhibit that covers the body, literally, in technology. It's access and ability. Take a look.
There's been a 180-degree shift in just thinking about what a prosthesis is, and it's a very important part of a person's identity.
And that's just one of the design developments being featured in Cooper Hewitt's exhibit called Access Plus Ability. Kara McCarthy is the museum's curatorial director.
When we start to see a critical mass in a particular area, the curators tend to gravitate towards that and start to think maybe this is really worth an exhibition. And frankly, we've seen a real abundance of activity in accessible design in the last few years.
And the exhibit looks like a collection of the coolest gadgets and gizmos that you might find at the Apple Store, except each one was created with the goal of having a profound impact on the lives of disabled individuals.
Some people, for instance, who might have very limited use of limbs and they need to do hands-free connecting or communication could really benefit from eye-tracking devices where they can send an entire message, do an email, type an email, just using their eyes and then look at the send button and send it off. And that's game-changing.
The exhibit is divided up into 3 sections. The moving section examines the design of devices like wheelchairs, whether it's being wheeled around a hospital or competing in a wheelchair race. The connecting section focuses on different digital technologies that help users reach each other. And the living section focuses on some of the more basic necessities in life, from aesthetically pleasing grab bars to utensils that help those who have hand tremors.
What we really wanted to achieve in the exhibition and to celebrate was this whole range of activity. And it's not just in one area, but really it's encompassing so much. And to me, that's a really encouraging signal that there is a real abundance of activity and interest in the whole field.
Some of the innovations are quite simple. For example, PillPack is a mail-order pharmacy that organizes a patient's medication into tear-off packets based on when they need to take them, taking the frustration out of organizing daily pills. Other tools are highly technical, like this device called BrainPort, which allows the visually impaired to see a pixelated image of the world around them by converting light from these glasses into electrical impulses, which are transmitted to the brain through an electrode that sits on the tongue.
And this is obviously the part that's going to go in the mouth.
With the ballpoint pen and the pad, I'm able to feel the texture when I'm drawing. So I can feel the line, and I can also feel it on my tongue with the electric shock of the BrainPort on my tongue. So I can feel both at the same time, and that helps me visualize what I'm drawing better.
The Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities also participated in the exhibit. Not only is Commissioner Victor Calise an advocate for the disabled, he understands firsthand how profound the impact of technology can be on their quality of life.
An exhibit of this sort certainly heightens that awareness, shows people with disabilities what's out there, and how they can improve their life through technology.
Sometimes access and ability are about more than improving function. Sometimes it's about using style and flair to modernize plain or an elegant design, which can improve how those using the technology see themselves and how they're viewed by the world around them.
Just because you're disabled doesn't mean you have to look disabled, and there are lots of different devices that make people feel good about who they are. For instance, my wheelchair got white and red spokes and red accents on my chair because it's kind of my style.
Among the most striking aesthetic improvements is the use of artificial limb covers by Alleles, a Canadian design studio. They don't replace artificial limbs, but as you can see from this video posted by YouTube user Victor Sanchez, it simply covers it up. The physical effects are minimal, but the psychological effects are undeniable.
There we go. It looks great. I am extremely pleased here. I cannot wait to walk around.
Access Plus Ability runs until September 3rd, 2018. I'm Andrew Falzon for Science and You.
As climate change becomes more and more unpredictable, the environment looks like it's fighting back. former human rights lawyer Miranda Massie talks about a climate museum and what message she hopes to send to museum goers from near and far.
We're mobile for now, and we intend to remain mobile forever. It's important to distribute the content. It's also important for it to have a home base.
Miranda Massie is the president and founder of the Climate Museum. It's an idea without a physical location, and that's just the concept, in a way. Massie is a civil rights attorney by trade and considers climate change the premier civil rights and human rights issue of today.
Within the wealthiest nation on earth, we see grave inequalities in how climate change affects poor people and people with more resources and people of color and white people. One example of this is the urban heat island effect, where in some inner city neighborhoods in our nation's cities, it can be up to 5 or 6 degrees hotter in the summer than it is in a suburb a mile away with more trees. The military talks about climate change as a risk multiplier. It's also a very fierce inequality multiplier. You can see that in the way that climate change right now around the world is hitting the poorest nations and people hardest. The island nations of the Pacific are being inundated with salt water. These are peoples and nations that have contributed virtually nothing to the crisis that we now face, and their lifestyles, their ways of life, their very national identities, their cultural homes are in danger of being obliterated by climate change.
Massie felt the push to increase her activism in environmental causes after Superstorm Sandy hit New York. She was looking to join a climate museum and, to her surprise, couldn't find one that existed.
I assumed at that point that I'd read about one somewhere and was inadvertently plagiarizing and needed to go find out who was doing this critical project so I could leave what was in other ways a dream job for someone with my background and training and attach myself to that. And the reasons why I was so compelled by the idea for a museum are that museums are incredibly popular, they reach an enormous audience, and people trust them. So if we want a culture shift on climate, and we do, we need to look to institutions like museums to deliver it.
So, we're in New York City. Why did you pick, of all places, here? Why not go in a place where it's a little bit more challenging, where people are doubtful that climate change even does exist?
We will get more Oklahomans if we build a climate museum in New York City than if we have 5 traveling exhibits that go through Oklahoma City, which we should also do. New York City is the cultural destination for domestic tourists. We have a population in the United States that's concerned about climate change, but not yet active. That's our sweet spot. Who we want to come is people who are open and curious, maybe a little bit skeptical, but have some reason to start to feel concerned and to move them toward making decisions on the basis of climate change, calling a state representative, supporting their child's school in lowering its carbon footprint, making individual consumer different choices on a climate basis. So we want to move people who are thinking about it but not yet active, because there's a climate silence in America today.
Massie is not focused on going it alone. She's counting on the public's participation, and the way to engage the public is a pretty basic idea.
The whole purpose of the Climate Museum, from a certain perspective, is to make climate messengers. These Polaroids, this project started a little less than a year ago at New York City's Summer Streets Fair. And we had the idea of taking pictures of people and having them write their thoughts about why we need a climate museum on their own picture. And people flocked to our booth, and we got a huge range of beautiful answers, most of them converging around our own theory of change. It was remarkably confirming.
To learn more about the Climate Museum, go to climatemuseum.org. Science and You tests your knowledge. Do you know the answer? The volume of a sound is determined by what property of a sound wave? Is it A, frequency, B, wavelength, C, velocity, or D, amplitude? The answer? Amplitude. The amplitude of a sound wave is the distance from a wave's starting point to its peak. The greater the amplitude, the stronger the wave. This is how we measure the volume of sound. New innovations can be fun, but as some 6th graders in Columbia, South Carolina found out, it can even be more rewarding. Tinabeth Piña sat down with teacher and founder of the nonprofit The Hand Challenge to hear how his students use science for good.
MakerBot had this great program called the MakerBot Academy program. So they gave us our first 3D printer for free, which was wonderful. And very quickly, my students and I figured out that we wanted to do more than just download and print figures from the internet. I sort of call it going beyond the Yoda statue stage.
Chris Kraft is a former STEM teacher for 6th grade students at Crossroads Intermediate School in Columbia, South Carolina. And when his class received a free 3D printer back in October 2013, he and his students quickly realized what they wanted to use this technology for.
We found an organization called Enabling the Future, and they match people with a need, a demonstrated need for a 3D printed prosthetic with folks like us that had a 3D printer. So sort of on a whim, we put the request out to Enable. They matched us with a little girl. She got a chance to come and visit us and meet the little girls that had done the project.
Everything started for the Hand Challenge when those 3 students, Carson, Corbin, and Mackenzie, decided to use technology to help those in need. They won the Belk Service Learning Prize in 2015, awarding them $8,000 after the 3 girls organized a handathon event, in which 85 of their classmates got together to build hands for children in need, and from there, the Hand Challenge grew.
Needless to say, they were excited, number one, to be utilizing what I would argue is a large part of their future in terms of the capacity to create and solve problems. So they realistically got a chance to solve a very real problem and truly, genuinely, not hyperbolic. It's not hyperbole. They got a chance to make a difference in someone else's life.
The hand works by using fishing line that opens and closes the fingers based on the position of the wearer's functioning wrist.
It essentially sits on top just like a prosthetic would, because this assumes that the child does not have functioning fingers. And then when they bend the wrist, it causes the fishing line portion to catch, and then that causes it to grip. So as they bend the wrist, it grips, and as they pull up, it releases.
Since its inception, the Hand Challenge has gotten more than 1,500 school districts, companies, and nonprofit organizations from around the world to participate, culminating in over 5,000 hands created and distributed all over the globe to places like Nigeria and India. Hands with superhero themes and even fidget spinners, and they're just a fraction of the cost of traditional prosthetics.
Typical prosthetics done at a real, like a brace and boot prosthetist, can run anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000. The fancier, more bionic ones, and of course there's insurance that's typically involved, but the bionic ones can be $80,000 or $100,000. We've just given these away completely for free, and we're fortunate to have raised some money from our nonprofit that now we've put right back into doing this for other people.
Where do you see this project going in the future?
The Hand Challenge is coming to a close, so we're going to sunset it shortly and build something brand new. We're looking as to what Hand Challenge 2.0 looks like, and we're looking at what that could look like from a new design as well. We're getting feedback from a lot of the recipients of our devices to say, hey, what did you like about it? What did you not like about it? What would you like to see changed? So we're hoping to inform, we're hoping to use all of that to inform the future, to figure out what's next. I'm just so proud, honored, and humbled to have worked with the 3 students that got it started way back when, as well as 3 other students that were the genesis behind Hand Challenge. And if it weren't for their work on all of this, then the nonprofit that runs it now wouldn't exist, and the children around the world that have been impacted by this would potentially not have had an opportunity to experience a device like these.
Although the Hand Challenge is closing up shop soon, they've also added prosthetic arms for people who don't have functioning wrists. We can't wait to see what other life-changing gadget they come up with next. For Science and You, I'm Tinabeth Piña.
As more and more states move toward legalizing marijuana, Mike Gilliam visits NYU Langone Medical Center to talk about the use of recreational drugs as modern medicine.
Over the years, magic mushrooms or psilocybin have been used in religion and as a recreational drug. Take this scene from the movie Knocked Up.
I'm freaking out right now, man. The mushrooms are turning on me.
But recent studies, including some at NYU, have focused on using psychedelics in a medical setting to help people cope.
Focused on psilocybin. Psilocybin is the psychoactive component of mushrooms, obviously a recreational drug that people use to trip. A similar intention might help people with anxiety, with depression, even with alcohol disorders.
Dr. Lee says it has been effective treating cancer patients.
So some of the preliminary studies have, for instance, used psilocybin in folks with serious and likely terminal cancer diagnoses, and then part of the therapy to help people deal with anxiety and fear of death.
The dosage is given in a more relaxed setting so that it's not like being in a doctor's office, and the patient is not required to sit and talk to a therapist.
The therapist is there to kind of help you not panic or freak out and to have a positive experience and to not let you just wander off down the street, you know, with the active dose of psilocybin on board.
Other mind-altering drugs have been used as well.
Ketamine for depression and other mental health stuff, ecstasy or MDMA for depression and other behavioral health diagnoses.
And when it comes to marijuana, things have certainly changed since the film Reefer Madness was made.
Here, if you want a good smoke, try one of these.
That was back in 1936, and marijuana was vilified on the big screen. Now, pot is legal for recreational use in 9 states and the District of Columbia. And in 29 states, medical marijuana is legal.
The biggest is cannabis, by far. Because of marijuana legalization, because of medical marijuana movements and kind of reforms state by state, that's the one people are going to use the most, and it's the one that'll be most widely available.
And it is currently being used for everything from controlling seizures to wasting from chemotherapy in cancer patients to post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. The other side of the issue is trying to rid patients of drug abuse. For years, cocaine was all the rage. Remember this scene from Scarface? But there's no magic wand to get a person off the drug. Or is there? There's been some experimental work done with treatments like magnetic wanding.
There's a lot of, I'd say, excitement and possibility in some interventions that are targeting areas of our brain that are kind of activated and disrupted by chronic drug use and addiction, and then trying essentially through kind of electric pulses and an electric kind of current, cause beneficial kind of readjustment to certain parts of our brain.
He says it's a little like neurosurgery that's not invasive.
You're not actually poking the brain or cutting into your skull or anything, but you're able to directly affect parts of our brain through kind of electrical impulses.
They haven't seen enough studies to indicate this will be a solution for cocaine addiction, according to Lee. But there is more and more research into that type of intervention. Currently, the biggest drug problem is the opioid epidemic.
Well, the opiate epidemic has been national. It hasn't discriminated. It's put this problem front and center in communities.
And while it has not been tackled by wanding or use of previous recreational drugs, there are new tools in the toolbox. For years, doctors were prohibited by law from treating opioid addiction with opiates. Now they're allowed to use things like buprenorphine.
It is a controlled substance. It is an opiate, but I can prescribe it in primary care, and I can maintain somebody on buprenorphine as a way to block and reduce or totally cease their heroin use, and it's a very effective means of treatment. That is new in the United States since 2002.
One of the things that makes it effective is that it can be prescribed by your doctor.
Makes it less of a stigmatized experience. If you can get it from your regular doc, like other common problems that you might be seeing a doctor for, that's a lot different than going to a specialty treatment center like a methadone clinic.
A person would take that medication in the privacy of their own home, and it completely takes away the effectiveness of and the desire to use heroin. Right now, Lee says, it's the best bet because it's very effective, and it gets rid of the need for daily visits to the methadone clinic and group sessions. So while alternative therapy shows some promise, Dr. Lee says the best way to battle problems like the opioid epidemic is to get more people into treatment with the therapies they already have. I'm Mike Gilliam for Science and You.
Nanotechnology is a term that's in the news a lot these days, and one CUNY nanotech team has just made a major discovery in the field. Ari Goldberg has more.
Nanotechnology is a science that deals with matter on a very small scale, nanometers at a time, often just the width of a single atom. To give you a sense of just how small that is, a human hair, for example, is about 100,000 nanometers thick. And today, some of the very biggest innovations are happening in this very small world.
How do you manipulate this type of tiny things that you cannot see with your eyes or touch with your hands? And then study the properties, electronic properties, magnetic properties, mechanical properties, chemical properties. So all of this all together makes the field of nanotechnology, and now is entering into hospitals, cancer research, more powerful, for example, phone or electronic devices.
In fact, the Advanced Science Research Center at the CUNY Graduate Center was designed specifically with this burgeoning field in mind, led by Ryan Uline, director of the Nanoscience Initiative.
We have the most advanced facility in New York City and one of the best on the East Coast. What if we could build smart drugs that can find and destroy cancer cells? Or create better sunscreens that protect our skin from cancer-causing UV rays?
That's how working with materials that are so small benefits us in the real world. In medicine, there are already nanobots small enough to go into a body and deliver drugs targeted specifically at a tumor. Or in the world of electronics, carbon nanotubes are being looked at as a faster, smaller, more efficient backbone for the next evolution in computer processors. In many ways, it's the next great science frontier. And Dr. Elisa Rieto's team at the ASRC is at the forefront of this research. Their nano breakthrough? Making diamonds from graphite.
In the macroscopic world, if you want to take a piece of graphite, so your tip of your pencil, and transform it into diamond, you need to use large pressures, right? And very high temperature. Now, what we have discovered is that if you go to the nanoscale, and instead of taking, a piece of graphite that is, 1 centimeter thick, for example, you shrink the thickness to having a single carbon layer, and you push these 2 layers of graphene one on top of the other one, you can induce a phase transformation and obtain a diamond layer. With very little energy, you're able to transform graphite into diamond at the nanoscale.
These aren't gem diamonds, of course, but more in the line of industrial diamonds. And the discovery made big waves in the scientific community. The practical applications of being able to create one of the strongest materials known to man in a thin, flexible, lightweight form are the stuff of science fiction turned fact. Industrial gloves protecting the wearer from injury, cars being safer with a diamond-hard exterior. Right now, the samples they're making are only about the size of a quarter, but Rieto sees great potential in the future.
The applications are clearly fantastic, because if you can imagine, right, that you have a layer, 2 layers of graphene that are flexible, are relatively cheaper than diamond to make, so you can make, for example, bulletproof vest. Then what you have is a vest that has this 2 layers of graphene, but when hit or under some pressure, hit by the bullet or under some pressure, it becomes diamond and actually goes back to graphene. So you have an instantaneous phase transformation of graphene to diamond.
Dr. Rieto's team made this discovery right here in this lab in the ASRC. But it was the College of Staten Island that provided the computer simulations to actually see and confirm what was happening.
How do you see at that scale that your two-layer, atomic layer atoms really form diamond, right? You can't really see. You see that you cannot, for example, penetrate with a diamond indenter anymore, which we did, but you can't really see your diamond. So that's why nanoscience, often the experiments are coupled with computer simulation, because the computer simulation can visualize atom by atom and show the phase transformation from graphite to diamond.
That's why nanotech is a relatively new field. It's only been the last few decades that computers and microscopes have gotten strong enough for scientists to really see what they were working with. But now, researchers like Dr. Rieto are starting to take what was once science fiction from the lab to the real world.
I would say now we start to think about application, because for a long time there was a lot of studies but not clear application. Now you start to see the promise coming in reality of what you can really do with nanotechnology in the real world.
From CUNY's Advanced Science Research Center, where big innovation comes in small packages, I'm Ari Goldberg.
We close our half hour with an update on all things science. Last month in science, IBM reclaimed the title for the world's fastest supercomputer. The machine, which is called Summit, reached a peak performance of 200,000 trillion calculations per second, which is more than double the speed of the previous speed leader, China's Sunway Taihu Lite supercomputer. Now that's really one fast bit of business. Sea level rise may not just impact our coastal areas, but our internet capabilities as well. According to a new study from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the University of Oregon, critical communication infrastructures like fiber optic cables and data centers could be underwater within 15 years. This is the first ever study on the risk of climate change on the internet. Researchers at Johns Hopkins Medicine successfully demonstrated a proof of concept treatment where nanoparticles fight brain cancer. Scientists injected human brain tumor cells into mice and then delivered nano-sized packets of genetic code called microRNAs to treat the tumor. The microRNAs attack the brain cancer stem cells and prevent their ability to spread, which has been a major hurdle in treating brain cancer to date. That's our show for today. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Magalie Laguerre-Wilkinson, and we'll see you next time on Science and You.